above Alaska. The pilots aboard Alaska Airlines Flight 53 reportedly witnessed enormous, bright, disc-like objects tracking their airplane. Ground control reports that no object is visible on radar, but it is the speed of the UFO craft that alarms the pilots.
Ahead, just underneath our radar, picked up a blip. He's moving about a mile a second. He's full out straight ahead of us, just disappeared. Man, he was there and then he was gone.
If you're a pilot and you report a UFO sighting to the FAA, you might as well turn in your license the next day. The FAA, the military, even civilian authorities don't want to know about UFOs.
Pilot encounters with UFOs first surfaced in the 1920s and 30s, long before black box and control tower tape recordings were possible.
Sightings by pilots have occurred ever since the very beginning with Kenneth Arnold. Kenneth Arnold was flying from Chehalis, Washington, over towards Idaho. Somewhere around Mount Rainier, he identified what looked to him to be about 9 aircraft traveling in an east to west position.
It was this man, Kenneth Arnold, from Boise in Idaho, who ushered in the era of the flying saucer.
At this point is where I had this terrific flash. I looked way off here to the north, and then when I saw where the flash came from, it was an echelon formation of a very peculiar-looking aircraft. The second craft from the rear had a more or less crescent shape, and of course I kept mulling in my mind, that's the damnedest looking airplane I ever saw.
Upon landing in Yakima, Washington on June 24, 1947, Arnold makes what would become the very first civilian reports of UFOs to the government. He would describe the objects to reporters as appearing and moving like, quote, saucers skipping across the water.
Somebody else twisted that around into the term flying saucer. That was the beginning of it.
His official report made to the Joint Army and Air Forces intelligence is seen here for the first time on television. Arnold describes the UFOs as thin, round in the front, and coming to a point in the back, and did not appear to whirl or spin. He watches as the craft flip and flash in the sun, and comments, "The more I observe these objects, the more upset I became, as I am accustomed and familiar with most all objects flying."
The Arnold case was extremely significant in that prior to it, there had been no talk publicly about disc-shaped shiny objects flying around. And we haven't been without UFOs or flying saucers ever since.
Coming up, the skies above New England are rocked by 3 separate UFO encounters, all captured on tape.
You got anything flying out in the area? Negative, 105 turned over. Well, then I just had a couple of UFO reports.
The Grand Canyon is a graveyard for 128 passengers and crew of 2 airliners which collided in a thunderstorm and crashed on peaks little more than a mile apart. The impact reduced the wreckage to carbonized smears of paint and metal. None survived. It was the worst commercial air disaster in history.
While some experimental black box and pilot voice recorders were in use by the military during World War II, it was not until a catastrophic mid-air collision in 1956, about 200 miles due east of Area 51, that onboard recording boxes were mandated by the FAA.
A major accident above Grand Canyon imposed the FAA and the NTSB to ask for all the airlines to be equipped with audio recording system.
Since the mandate of cockpit voice recorders, hundreds of reports have been made of strange lights, near-miss collisions, and radar tracking of unidentified flying objects. 3 recent pilot recordings captured over New England have been obtained for this broadcast. They are presented here for the first time.
One of the most fascinating cases is Lufthansa 405 out of JFK November 18th, 1995, where they saw a UFO across Long Island.
November 18, 1995, while on a routine flight above Long Island, New York, Lufthansa Flight 405, an Airbus A340 out of New York en route to Frankfurt, Germany, makes a disturbing call to Boston Air Traffic Control. The pilots reported unidentified flying object passing within 3,000 feet of their plane.
It should be on our tail about 10 minutes. We passed it just 1 minute ago and it was looking strange.
The UFO is described as a long cylindrical object with a white light on the front and a long green comet tail. The strange UFO is also seen by British Airways Flight 226, a 747 flying from London, and is just north of the object. The code name for British Airways flights is Speedbird.
I actually looked about opposite traffic 2000 feet above. It did have a very strong vapor trail which looked more like smoke, and the light on the front was very, very bright. Lufthansa 405, how far off to your side did that traffic pass? It was pretty close, and like the Speedbird said, it looked like 2,000 or 3,000 feet above on the left wing, just 1 mile, looked like a UFO.
Boston Air Traffic Control contacts Giant Killer, the military fleet area control and surveillance facility that monitors restricted airspace over the Northeast.
Giant Killer. They got anything flying out in the area? Negative, 105 turned over. Well, then I just had a couple of UFO reports. Oh, is that right? I had a couple of guys that reported lights just going over their head. I had no traffic whatsoever in the area. They said it passed within a mile of them, like a 2,000 feet above them, opposite direction. Oh, it could have been a meteor or something. No, we don't have any aircraft out there.
Both pilots confirm the object has glowing lights. The object has a green vapor trail, not like any vapor trail they've ever seen.
Both pilots immediately questioned the idea that the UFO they saw was a meteor.
Lufthansa 405, so you would say that it definitely wasn't a meteorite? So no, I don't know. It's 226 now. It couldn't have been a meteorite because it was flying level. It looked as if it was going very quickly. It definitely looked faster than normal aircraft. It was cruising in a straight line at one level flight. Number 226, thank you. We're looking into it. I mean, we're making a report. We really don't know what it was. And the military doesn't admit to anything flying tonight.
While the authenticity of this recording is not in question, the FAA and both airlines have never commented on this mysterious incident over New England. 2 years later, Boston would be the epicenter of yet another strange encounter between pilots and UFOs. But this time, the encounter would result in a near-miss collision. The incident was captured on tape by the aircraft's black box recorder. August 9th, 1997. Swiss Air Flight 127 is a jumbo jet en route to Zurich, Switzerland. Pilot Philip Boulbet and First Officer Kurt Grunder are at the controls. At 23,000 feet, Boulbet will later report that his visibility was excellent with no haze and a clear blue sky until an unidentified craft enters the plane's airspace. The pilot immediately contacts Boston Air Traffic Control.
Sister 127, go ahead.
Yes, sir. I don't know what it was, but it just overflew like a couple of 100 feet above us. I don't know if it was a rocket or whatever, but incredibly fast, opposite direction. It was too fast to be an airplane.
Later in his official report, Boulbet will describe the UFO as a bright white cylindrical object with no wings, similar to a white shark. Aviation writer Don Berliner filed a Freedom of Information Act request to obtain the FAA audio and written records of this incident.
The Swiss Air case is significant because the object that was described is quite unusual, and the people reporting it have excellent credentials. These are veteran airline pilots.
Moments later, the Boston control tower contacts another sector operator who is about to take over the flight.
Hey Chris, Swiss Air 127, he had a UFO or a rocket, something almost hit him in my airspace.
UFO or a rocket almost hit the Swiss Air 127?
Went right above him, about 200 or 300 feet.
The pilot's official incident report classifies the object as a UFO, categorizing its shape, color, and speed.